Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us at today's first Kinetics webinar of the 2025 series. Warm welcome to you all, and we've got some interesting and exciting topics to share with you this morning. As I was casting my mind back to some of the webinars that we've run in the past, it's a whole wealth of information for you, our customers, and our potential customers to actually navigate the cybersecurity landscape. If I look back at some of the key messages that we had in 2024, we did a cyber incident response tabletop exercise. This was something that was well subscribed to, and it took people through a cyber incident and how you actually plan for those things. We also talked about the lessons that were learned from the largest global IT outage last year, critical lessons that need to be taken on board. We also taught how to protect yourself from the dark web using some of the basic tools and the cybersecurity services that we have at Kinetics. We also explored the idea of, are you actually really covered by cyber insurance? Are your protections enough to make sure that in the event of a cyber attack, you're actually going to be covered by your insurance company? And we also then went through some steps which talked about the reasonable steps that you need to take to protect your organization from cybercrime. And this particular webinar is also particularly relevant to that, because I'd like to welcome and make a warm introduction to Bill Lunam, who is our CTO, who is an oracle on all things cybersecurity. So welcome, Bill.
Yes, thank you, Matt. Rolling of eyes at that mention of my expertise.
Not wanting to build you up too much, Bill, but totally rely on you for this sort of stuff, and it's well deserved. So what today's session is about today, we've talked to you previously about frameworks in the cybersecurity space, the likes of NIST and Essential 8. But today's topic is the New Zealand government's recommendations for small, medium enterprise businesses like our audience today and like most of our clients. So with that in mind, I'll actually hand over to Bill now to take us through the deck.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And I'm just, okay. I trust everybody can still see the deck, and I'll move it over here so I'm looking at the camera.
Absolutely.
Right. And okay, all right. Introduction, the critical controls. On the surface, New Zealand's 10 critical controls can look relatively simple. Do not be confused. We're not going to go into depth of detail. You can be as sophisticated as you want. Why are we interested in the 10 critical controls? For cybersecurity, you do need to have some sort of framework so you can say, we are moving forward. Now, there's lots of them you can choose. Why not go with the one that our own government is recommending? And I will say the Essentials 8 in Australia has a lot more detail to it, but a lot of my friends in Australia are really quite jealous of our one because it actually does allow you to explore options more to do with your business and your risk profile. Okay, so today I'm going to briefly describe each control. I'm going to give you for want of a better word, a minimum. So a sensible precaution you can take for that control based on the most common areas of attack, and also the disruption and the cost to the business of perhaps choosing the control you might use. And then for those of you that perhaps need a higher level of security, give you an option for a higher level. Now, this will make more sense as I go through this one. Patching and software. We've all heard all the time, you should patch, you should patch, you should patch. And the control basically says, yes, everything, everywhere, all the time. Sounds a bit like an award-winning movie, I think. What we need to worry about is what are the most common areas of attack, and you can go and get reports for as many as you want off the internet, and they're all going to tell you the same thing. The 3 most common areas of attack that you're going to have: your desktops, your laptops, your servers. That's followed by your firewalls, although actually between those 2, desktop, laptops for patching and servers, you will then get your online presence, and then firewalls. So we need to make sure our desktops, laptops, and servers are patched. We do that for you if you're on our Care Foundation product. We do that for your Microsoft Windows, Microsoft applications. We also have quite an extensive list of third-party products that we do as well. We had a soft release last year that we started doing that list of third-party common freeware applications on all the on Macs. And this quarter, I expect to announce that we're also now making sure we're managing the Mac OS, which is a little bit more sophisticated. So that would be your sensible precaution to make sure you have managed patching on all those devices. You also need to think of your line of business application. Do you have an application that has sensitive information in it, or does financial transactions? Your vendor will release updates on their own schedule, and each of those will need to be applied differently. So that is that's on-demand solution when you need it. It's not built into the program. We can't automate that. When those come out, we need to make sure those get patched. The other one that the control does kind of mention a bit there is IoT devices. So think you've plugged that smart TV in, it's communicating to the internet. These days, a smart fridge. If you really wanted to go to that big degree, you should be keeping all of those updated. Now, that means somebody physically going around. How do I do this? Do I do this everything? There are other ways to deal with that, and we will come to that as we go through the controls. Okay, multi-factor authentication. By now, hopefully everyone knows you should have that turned on your 365, and it should be enforced. Once again, part of the basics that we want to do everywhere on our foundation plan. Also geo-locking across New Zealand and Australia. What more can you do? Well, think, where else do you have data? Google Drive. Are you using MailChimp? What about perhaps you've got a device that you don't have a receptionist anymore? There's a device out the front, and people come in and it's connected off to the cloud, and they register there. Do you have security on those? And for that, you really need to have your own policy and process inside the company that says wherever data is kept, we need to know where that data is. Keep a list of those applications. We need to know how MFA is enabled on it. Have instructions. A lot of these sorts of things, like for example, a MailChimp login, would be created by your own company for your staff rather than us. And also how you check that MFA is enabled on these, because it's not uncommon for some of these applications to have it as a choice users have. You can't enforce it, so you do need to go back and look at that. Asset lifecycle. Well, here what we try to do is give you information. I mean, you control the budget. You decide to replace things. All we can say is this is how old something is, and indicate when something is going out of support. Now, it's a good one because we often, all of us have the same, I think deep down the same problem, that as stuff ages, and I have personal experience with this, it slows down, and that slow is gradual and insidious, but it also affects productivity. So replacing old equipment, lifecycle management is good for security, but it's really good for productivity as well. And we do want to help out. If you haven't been there, go into our partner portal. Under compliance, under asset reports, you'll find you've got hardware asset reports, software asset reports, changes in your care for that month. So we give you a whole lot of information to help you track what that equipment is and how old it is. Now, you see I've actually highlighted there two actually reports. As the bottom one is well worth having a look at. If you didn't know, we also have your 365 usage reports in there. Like the hardware ones, every month they go in, they're there for a year. It gives you your license renewals, when the commit is, how many licenses you have. It tells you how many licenses are assigned and how many are free. And then it goes on to list every user and the licenses that apply to that user. So we're giving you information to help you make the business decisions. Backups. The control says back up your data wherever it is. So we have built into our foundation a lovely backup product that we will supply for your servers. Back them up to the cloud. Happens every hour. Data is kept for 90 days. There's an immutable copy of it, which means doesn't matter what goes wrong, that should always be protected. But where else is your data? There's data on your desktops. People go, well, but I don't need a backup of my desktop because I have OneDrive. OneDrive is not a backup. It's a file syncing product. And then where does that OneDrive go? It goes into your cloud, where you have your Teams, which undoubtedly you're now saving docs in. You have your SharePoint, you have your OneDrive, you have your Office 365. You should also be backing those up. The last part of that is, what other SaaS applications are you using? Are those vendors backing up your data? And those are questions that you do have to ask them. Can I go back to a point in time? Can I restore? Remember, Microsoft does not back up your data. Next control, security awareness. I have to say, every time we hear a client goes, I'm suspicious of that email, I'm deleting it, we're going, security awareness works. So you should be having regular training for your staff, regular phishing testing. You don't want to overdo the training. If you have training that comes in all the time, people will start to go click, 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 moving on. I've met the requirements. So once again, we can supply this for you, part of our foundation. We need you to let your staff know that it's important that your company needs them to do the training, right? This is not the IT company that's asking them to do it. This is actually a requirement of your business. In the end, these guys, they are your own staff are your last defense. Now, other things you can do, keep that awareness going. You've probably got an OSH committee, maybe take something like that and turn that into a cybersecurity committee. Have a group of people who are there going, looking at how their peers work and how they work and going, here's perhaps an area of improvement. Now we start to get down to the more complex ones. Implement application control. What is application control? At its full implementation, application control is when you look at, for example, your PC and we say every application is denied install, and then we allow the applications that you can run. Okay? Now, that's a process to get to that point. That's obviously not something you can just turn on, and that requires a level of ongoing maintenance and management, because you've got an application, it's installed. We use a number of ways to identify what it is, but out comes a new version of it that gets installed. Now it gets blocked because it doesn't recognize it's the same application. The control, going back to what's a sensible first step, points out that if you have a modern endpoint protection, so that's where EDR comes in. So if you've got antivirus is the way we used to protect you for the threats that were around a decade ago. EDR takes everything that antivirus does, brings in a whole lot of smarts and understanding of modern threats. That's why you need to be getting rid of that antivirus and going to EDR. A good EDR also has a block list and application control that says, here's a legitimate application. One Minicat's been an example, but it's used a lot by hackers, so we're going to block that. So you can meet that control by having an EDR, or a good EDR, I should say. Provide, here's the real thing here, and use a password manager. Your web browser is not a password manager. I cannot stress that enough. They call it password management in your web browser. I think for a password manager, you need some sort of control within the company of that. So we have a password manager. There's other ones you can get. They don't need to be expensive. They can be relatively simple to use. Once again, you actually need a policy because you need to encourage your staff to use the password manager. So here, I'm always talking to the managers here, because I want them, when they're having a conversation with their staff, going, well, show me what you're doing. I'm here to help you with this. I want them to see that actually they are reaching for their password manager. Oh, big one here, centralized logging. I can't do a presentation without throwing in a few acronyms, right? So you're going to go, but certainly everything is centrally logged. Security is made up of lots of different programs and applications. Every one of them has their own management and their own logging. 365 has its own management. The EDR has its own management. Every product is like that. What they're talking about here is a thing where you pull security events into one place so that they've all got the same timeline or the same timestamp on them. Therefore, you can follow events. That's also called a SEAM, S-E-I-M. You will hear these. I'm going to try and simplify it for you at the end. Then you have something that looks at all of those events and identifies alerts and automates the actions to deal with those. Now that's called a SOAR, S-O-A-R. If you going to the next level from then, because automation is great, but there's, often we're dealing here with a person that's doing something. So there's always this gray area that's going on. So you need human action, a team that is going to go, hey, this is throwing up an alert. It's not sure what's going on. This is odd behavior. Let's investigate. And that's called a SOC, S-O-C. Now, we simplify that all down. These days, we often use the term MDR, Managed Detection and Response. You will also hear XDR and NDR. They are really just different versions of MDR. They are as much manufactured by marketing organizations as they are by cyber security. So what's a way to be, what's a sensible solution for the logging? If you want to go and pull the logs in from every device on your network, that is a lot of work. And that's something that has to be done again and again and again, because you've just added new security cameras. Somebody needs to investigate. How can we get logs from them? Does it do logging? We need to pull that into the system. Got all these other bits and pieces going on, which perhaps when you look at the common access points and threats aren't that common. So a lot of work for less return. What we do is we have a product we call Care Vigilance. It pulls these security events from the three primary places where this happens. So your Microsoft 365, that is vital. That has to be in there. That is there being attacked 24/7. You probably saw in the Herald, I think 2 days ago, or maybe it was end of last week, a firm down in Hamilton breached over Christmas, and then their email being used to redirect home purchase funds off to hackers' accounts. They were breached over Christmas. The hackers didn't take Christmas off. The hackers don't stop at 1 o'clock in the morning. 365 is there all the time. So we must have those there. The EDR is incredibly smart software. It sees a lot of things going on. We need those events to come in. And we also have in our Care Vigilance product an agent that sits on your endpoints, your PCs, your laptops, Windows, Mac, your Windows servers, all those events coming into one place. And then a good MDR is looking not at those as individual things, but also across those for patterns and seeing what is going on. So you can take that to, and those logs are kept for 30 days. So that's something we offer. You can take that to the next step. We can customize that bespoke solution, bring in lots of other logs, etc. So that's the next level that you would go to. Conscious of the time, and least enforce the principle of least privilege. In other words, if you don't need to do that, Why should you do that? Now, why should you have that right? That really has to start with a good policy on your part. It is not at all uncommon. I see it happen everywhere. It happens here. I need access to this to do this job. So somebody is given access to something because they need to get some data to do a job. Now, maybe they only need to do that once, but they keep that access forever. Maybe they only need that data once a quarter, in which case, why should they have the rights? Why not have somebody get them that data every quarter? So this is about slimming down the area of attack should somebody's account be compromised. One of the places to look at that is actually on desktops, laptops, desktops. It's not uncommon for people to have a lot of privileges on those devices because there's applications that need those rights or higher rights to run. Historically, there's been a lot of that. So we now have a thing called a PAM, Privileged Access Manager. It's a bespoke solution. We put that out on all the devices. We can then monitor what takes place, can approve the applications that need these elevated rights, and then we take away the admin rights or the higher rights levels from the staff members on those devices. And when they go and click on the application that to start must or to update must have these elevated rights, in the background, some smarts actually creates a temporary admin account that gives it the rights to launch and run, and then all that information is thrown away. So there's literally nothing there for a hacker to grab hold of. If you're an IT manager and you're going, oh, but I need to be able to hop on and work on these, there's got a lovely little tech tool available in it where you scan the QR code and bang, you are given those rights so that you can work unobstructed. Other things you can do, you've got to think about where your data is. So don't get, and what rights are handed out. Don't get hung up on historical rights that have been given. You know, decisions have been made in the past for the world we lived in the past. Think about how you want structure now and implement that structure. Good place to start would be your SharePoint. The best practice these days would be to have discrete sites for every group. Our Cambium team can help design that for you. And work through that process with you. Okay, we're almost there. Implement network segmentation. Actually, I was in a meeting today where this was being talked about. Network segmentation, that is a network security guy's dream. We should lock everything down and you have to call me even if you just want to unplug your laptop from there and plug it in there. Now that's once again, a solution that some businesses might need. Maybe I'm a bank. That would make perfect sense for me. But in a smaller business where we can kind of see everyone, I know if there's somebody walking around the office who doesn't work here, that level isn't quite so important, but there are some things we should do. We have done it here. I recommend IoT devices, smart fridges, security cameras, etc. They should be split off onto their own network. So if something goes wrong and they get hacked, well, they're going to be able to go from my fridge to my TV to my security. They can't get into the rest of the network. Guest Wi-Fi should also be like that. Going back a long time, guest Wi-Fi was often just a different password and login. It should be a separate network that does not give any access to your production network. And I would recommend that staff mobiles are only allowed to connect to that network. The next one you could look at is your actual Wi-Fi. So make devices register for it. So staff can't go, I've got a password, I just can't add my mobile in. It needs to be given access based on every network device has a unique thing called a MAC address, so that MAC address is allowed. So a new laptop comes on the network, we would allow that MAC address. So you could work through and do those as sensible steps for that control. Okay, now I've tried to do that within this time frame. I'm going to ask now, because I was very quick, if we have any questions. So I can see one that's come up here. Oops, give me a moment. How would Kinetics ensure this area is well covered when onboarding a client? Is there, if there's, I'm not sure, it doesn't say what a specific area is. Okay, so we need to, first of all, onboard clients and start to, once, a bit like a client, we need information as well. So we need to develop some of our cybersecurity. So is centralized logging included in Care Foundation? So cybersecurity, our foundation plans cover a lot of these, what we're going to call the minimums or sensible precautions. We can't do, so every business is going to have its own, perhaps, differences. We were using the example this morning that you could have two businesses that sell consumer goods. So I've got TVs and stereos, but one of them is a retail store and one of them is a warehouse. So the available resources and the ability for them to adapt how their business works is very different. A retail store can't make everybody go through a checkpoint and scan in and scan out, right? Whereas a warehouse can. So that's why we have our quarterly meetings with you, and that's why we do try to bring up we have our recommendations. So during an onboarding process, we need to gather data, but we cover a lot of those basics in our foundations, and your account manager that you're talking to should be able to show you that in a chart. Is centralized logging included in Care Foundation? The centralized logging, which for us is the MDR, so we don't go, it's just the logging, it's the MDR, so it's that whole 24/7 response, has been included in our Security Plus product. So you have Foundation and then you have Security Plus, because it adds, it is more expensive. These security experts, if you need to hire a threat hunter to come in and work for you, they're going to cost you $600 an hour US. All right. What we've done is we've found that barrier is too high, because I think every client should have it. So we are changing our Security Plus product. We're taking out a lot of the other items we've had in there and said, here, and making them optional. So choices, do you want to cover this? Is this important to your business? And focusing in on having just that as an uplift to any foundation product. I hope that answers the question. I can still answer.
That's hot off the press, Taryn, and this is one of the things that we wanted to take our customers through our assessment of your environment and compare it with these critical controls, and then you'll have the very clear view of what is in their service offering and what needs to be upgraded if you have specific requirements that need it.
I am limited by the amount of time here. So I'll come back to questions in a moment. Just put this sign up. The website is not live yet, but our next webinar is on AI, and there's a QR code there that you can use. You can register on that. The actual link will go up on the website. And I see. So it is risk versus affordability assessment. I'm going to say yes. In the end, though, the assessment, the decision is your decision. You have the budget, you spend the money. It's like, simple terms, replacing an old PC. We can make recommendations, but in the end, I could be a total security expert and say, I have one recommendation, you must do all these things. So your staff can't breathe without setting off an alarm. That would cover my backside if something goes wrong. But you've got to spend the money. You've got to have the budget. So we do try to actually make sure that people are aware of where the common risks are, and making sure we're homing in and getting those done first. That's where you're going to get your bang for your bucks. And if you have special needs from there on in, so if you, then we can target those with bespoke solutions.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right, David. That's a good call in the notes. So we're at nearly time. So just to wrap up, just reiterating what Bill has already said, please reach out to your account managers. And they can take you through an assessment of the critical controls and how our products and services actually meet the certain levels within those controls. And we'd be happy to talk to you about it, because we see it as our role to educate our existing clients and our prospective clients on what protections need to be in place. Now, just about this next webinar, we've had 6 AI-focused webinars in 2024. This is a continuation of that. And if you've been participating in any of the webinars that Ben has previously run, this is actually taking the use of AI chatbots and looking at ways in which using AI for hyper-automation within your business. And there's an exciting case study there of something we've already implemented within a client. So please register now, and then we'll take you through that on the 26th. And that's us for today. So thanks for attending the first webinar for 2025. We look forward to seeing you again soon. And as I said, please reach out if you need any further information. Cheers.